Alrighty, welcome back everyone. We just talked about just a review of the entirety of the regular season. Got through the first 7 weeks in the first segment, then got through the rest of it in this last segment, and a lot of stuff. There's no doubt about that. It was a crazy regular season, but then it made way for that CFP to get underway, and really the bowl season as well that really kind of informed a lot of the narratives that we heard throughout the CFP. So let's go ahead and jump into this thing and let's talk about what the CFP held. We'll obviously be able to slow down just a little bit in this segment compared to the last couple because we have a little bit less to talk about, let's say. But definitely let's jump in and let's get into those first round games. Notre Dame gets a big time win, 27-17 over Indiana. It ended up being a 10-point win, but anyone that was watching this game know that Notre Dame pretty much dominated this one, especially their defense. Really both defenses dominated this one in a lot of ways. That Jeremiah Love run was the difference maker in this one in a lot of ways. Definitely put Notre Dame on a very good track, but Notre Dame dominated in the trenches defensively. They struggled offensively and definitely added a lot of questions about what the future, the next game against Georgia held, what Penn State possibly held, and definitely put them in question of, is this offense going to be able to elevate the way that they need to in the right moments throughout this thing? Obviously made enough plays in this game, but definitely were some questions with how that, especially that offensive line, worked against that Indiana defensive line. They had some really good success and definitely put a little bit of a question of how they would handle Georgia on the line there. But then we move forward. We did have probably the closest game of the first round games. Clemson, powered by just an insane performance from Cade Klubnik, what might have been one of the best performances of the entire thing, if I'm being totally honest, but he pulled within 7 in the fourth quarter. Texas returned the favor with a 77-yard touchdown from Jaden Blue, and that thing was kind of over pretty much right then. Obviously, the Texas defense played a huge role in this game, got a couple of different times, and people were wondering, is that going to be something that a team down the road, whether it was Oregon, Ohio State, or maybe even Arizona State, could really exploit on that back end? Didn't necessarily end up happening. Obviously, was kind of a one-off with TJ Moore just going crazy in that game, but remarkable finish from Texas there. They move on to the quarters that made way for what was really a remarkable game that we'll talk about here in a second. Then we did have Penn State just dominate SMU from start to finish, and we'll talk about the narratives here in a second that came out of that one, but really controlled the pace of this game, dominated the line of scrimmage, got 2 pick sixes from their linebackers to start this one, and a lot of people, had some questions about how much the cold really affected this one. I think it really did. Penn State did not look like a team that could really pass the ball very effectively, and obviously that added to the questions of what the future held for this season for the CFP for Penn State. But overall, real domination from Penn State in this one. Definitely put them on an inside track for a semifinal game because they had a good draw against Boise State for the next round, so they felt very good coming out of this one. A whiteout in Happy Valley, and it was a very fun one to watch unfold, I can tell you that. Then you had Ohio State just handle Tennessee and shut everyone up, including myself. I picked Tennessee to win that game. They did not win that game by any means. Will Howard threw for over 300 yards. Jeremiah Smith dominated from start to finish, and Ohio State looked like the team that we'd kind of been waiting on. The team that looked like a $20 million team, the team that looked like the one that was going to pull away with the national title. That's what we were waiting for. That was the team that we were waiting for, and that was kind of the Ryan Day that we were waiting for in a lot of different ways, and we've seen it kind of carry out throughout the rest of the CFP. But the narratives coming out of this one, as you have to imagine, the SEC fans had a little bit of a field day. They said Indiana, they said SMU didn't belong by any means. They said that Alabama, Ole Miss, South Carolina, what have you, absolutely should have been in the mix. They got quiet very quickly shortly after this because the bowl games had not unfolded before these games. Obviously, they would have, but by the time the quarterfinals happened, and we'll talk about that here in a second. But also, anti-expansionists did a lot with this, said that 12 teams is way too much. I would very much argue there weren't 12 CFP-worthy teams. I'd argue there won't be in many seasons. But at the end of the day, the home environments really won some people over and made a really fun week out of some not-so-fun games, really. Nonetheless, it made some really great atmospheres, and I don't know about y'all, but I had a great time watching these games unfold. It was really incredible to see what happened here, and definitely those home environments are something that we'll talk about a little bit later in the week. Could be something that's coming a little bit more frequently to the CFP as we move forward, but definitely an incredible first round. The other part was, home games really became a fan favorite, and people were wondering, should we have them in the quarterfinals? But in the quarterfinals, we did have a lot of bowl games, and we had some really good ones. It started with Penn State and Boise State, and this one was interesting. It was a very fun game really late into it. Boise State pulled within 3 after a huge play from Matt Lauder down the sideline. but the running back duo of Kaytron Allen and Nick Singleton was just way too much. Some huge throws from Drew Aller to start this one, but looked a little bit shaky throughout this one, at least consistently, and that Ashton Jeanty race to history fell just short of Barry Sanders in that one, but remarkable game. Definitely put Penn State in a really good place going forward, and definitely some questions still lingered about that offensive passing game, but looked a little bit more solid than it did against SMU and put them in a better place as they move forward to play Notre Dame. Then you had Texas just escape 39-31 against Arizona State in double overtime. To me, so far, this is the game of the CFP. Now, we have a couple in the next round that really give it a good run for their money, but this one was absolutely wild. Texas was up 14 at halftime. Cam Scadaboo plays maybe the best performance of the entire CFP thus far. Comes back in the second half. Texas hits the 4th and 13 in the first overtime, and Andrew Makuba gets the INT to seal it. This one was insane. It was all over the place, a couple of insane plays, but Quinn Ewers takes over late in that game. Texas gets the big-time win, and they move on to play that Ohio State team that was already taking a buzzsaw to Oregon. You know, that game wasn't even over, and Ohio State was already up on Oregon. They did not stop. They got up 34-0 in this game. Jeremiah Smith and just about everyone else on that team had a field day. They had, I believe, 4 different touchdowns, over 40 yards, and Ohio State looked like the obvious team that was going to win the national title after this week. Did not look like any of the teams around them had much of a shot if they were going to play that level of football. Then you did have Notre Dame get that big-time win over Georgia, 23-13. Georgia, led by Gunnar Stockton, missed chance after chance in this game. You know, Gunnar Stockton was not remotely the reason that Georgia lost this game. Some pocket mobility issues, some awareness issues that definitely were a problem, some sideline awareness issues that were a big-time problem in this game, but remarkable coaching from Marcus Freeman, a really good play from that Notre Dame defense, and a couple of big-time plays from Riley Leonard with his legs were the difference in this one, and Notre Dame moved on to play Penn State in the Orange Bowl, put them in a really good place to move forward to that possible national title, and a lot of the narratives came crashing back down to earth. By this time, Alabama had lost. By this time, a lot of teams at South Carolina had lost. Ole Miss was coming up the next day, and people were kind of hoping they would lose. But at the end of the day, the narrative flipped very, very quickly, and a lot of people were talking about the Big Ten, obviously, as the best conference in the country. 2 teams in the semifinals. SEC only had 1. It was the new team, Texas, and some people had a field day with that one, going back the other direction at some SEC fans. Obviously, a normal thing to do in the world of college football, so not necessarily overly surprised by that one, but the quarterfinal games were really fun. You know, Boise State put up a really good fight, definitely proved that they belong. You also had Arizona State absolutely proved they belong, definitely put Texas in a very weird spot, and added a lot of questions about what that Texas team really could do, especially running the football against an Ohio State team that was looking like a buzzsaw at this point. Was looking like a team that if they played that level of football, none of these games were going to be close. They were going to be able to pull away, but Notre Dame looked like a team that they were just never going to go away. They were going to play really, really efficient, really clean football throughout these games, and they were just going to wait for you to make the mistake. They were going to take advantage, and that's exactly what they did against Penn State. And moving forward to those semifinal games, Notre Dame gets a dramatic win over Penn State, 27-24, and this was one there Penn State's going to be remembering for a long time. 10-point lead early in this one. Notre Dame gets a huge middle eight where they get the 3 points right before halftime with Steve Angeli coming in, get the touchdown right out of it, tie it, and then take the lead pretty much shortly after, go up 17-0, and then Penn State marched right back down, tied the game, got an immediate INT, got ahead again by 24-17, and then Jaden Greathouse returned the favor. So it was a little bit of a duel in the second half of this game, went back and forth, but was an incredible game from both teams. Drew Aller made the ultimate mistake. He made the mistake that really stopped the stalemate. Christian Gray makes a great play on the ball, and Mitch Jeter officially hits the game winner. Notre Dame moves on to the national title for the first time since 2012, and obviously seeking their first national title tonight and since 1988. So a lot of different things went into this game. Remarkable second half from both these teams, but Notre Dame made those couple of plays at the end the way they had really throughout this entire tournament. Then you did have Ohio State get the big-time win over Texas. This was a 14-point win, but it was not a 14-point win. It was a very, very sketchy one. Ohio State stops Texas, scores immediately, and it looks like Ohio State might be able to pull away with this game. But then Texas was able to settle in, return the favor, and then the TreVeyon Henderson play happened. So the 2 big plays in this game were the TreVeyon Henderson play as well as the Jack Sawyer return. If the TreVeyon Henderson play doesn't happen, Texas kicking a field goal on that 4th down. The Jack Sawyer play never happens, and you look forward and you're wondering, I don't know what happens as you move forward. Maybe Texas ends up winning that game 17-14, and you're looking at an entirely different national championship. But remarkable performance from those two guys. The last time Ohio State and Notre Dame faced each other in a national title, I have no idea, Anthony. I'll be totally honest. I do not know. I think it was somewhere back in the 70s, if I'm not mistaken. I feel like I've heard that this week, but I genuinely don't know. And definitely would be a very interesting thing to figure out. And obviously, will be something that they'll talk about on today's game. Maybe they haven't played at all on this stage. Who knows? But let's talk about it. The national championship going on tonight, there were two teams left. That was about it. And the way this year started, it looked like there were about four teams that could win a national title. It looked like there were four teams that were far and above the mix. And it was Ohio State, Oregon, Texas, and Georgia. One of the teams is still standing. Ohio State is still standing here. Was a very, very weird road to get here. Obviously lost that Oregon game, a lot of questions. Obviously lost that Michigan game, and a million questions really came from it. Notre Dame obviously had that NIU loss and had to earn the respect back of a lot of people, including myself, throughout the back half of that season. Did that and then some. Did some really, really incredible play. And honestly, Anthony, I think you might be right. I think a lot of people are looking at this game and saying Ohio State's going to roll. Ohio State has more talent. Ohio State is rolling downhill right now. But you look at what Notre Dame can do. It is very, very hard to blow out this team. It's very, very hard to even beat this team by multiple scores, if I'm being totally honest. They're a very, very efficient, very good team, and they're a team that can keep everything in front of them. Now, we will have some questions about that man coverage that we've been talking about quite a bit on here, Anthony, and it sounds like Al Golden is more than happy to move forward with that cover one concept where he plays Xavier Watts deep, lets his guys play man coverage, drops a couple of linebackers in coverage, but overall, it's going to be man coverage, and that'll be a really interesting thing to watch. There's no doubt about that. But yeah, I think it's safe to say this Notre Dame defense might be the best that they've faced all year. I think that Texas defense is right around that level, but you saw what Ohio State had to do to get their offense going in that game, and you saw how close that game ended up being. So it's going to be an incredible one, and Notre Dame is going to do everything in their power to stay in this one, and obviously everything in their power to try to find a way to get those couple of plays that they've been able to get against Georgia, against Indiana, and against Penn State. They'll try to get them tonight, and we'll see what happens. But overall, obviously the coaching edge I have given to Notre Dame in this game, but it's a very slight one. It'll be incredible to watch that one unfold, and let's talk about that national title just a little bit and some of the worries that we have around it, some of the worries that it might just be a blowout and how the past kind of upholds that, and we'll talk about why I think this game and the future is going to be a little bit different right after this, so stick with us.